You will be covered by bees.
I mean, I was birthed from a stag. That was a good day at work, you know.
And I'm not a real cannibal. I'm so good. That was worse for you.
I don't know what I expected. I signed on basically on the basis of sitting down with Bryan Fuller and hearing him talk through the show and what he envisaged for the show. And I mean, Mads, once Bryan starts telling you what his plans are, you're right. You know, he keeps going, and it's very compelling. And that was it for me. But this, no.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What happened those first meetings when he was telling you what he had envisioned for the show?
He described for me like 3 seasons of the show, which bore no relation to the show we actually made eventually. It would have been an amazing show. But I don't know, I got a sense of who he was and his vision, right?
Yeah, and I had the same kind of meeting. I was supposed to be there for 15 minutes, and he went on for 3 hours. And I think he was in season 8 or something. And I was completely lost, but his energy was insane. I've met a few like very extreme radical people in this business, but nothing like that. It was just his dream and his vision was very hard to understand, but it was very compelling.
Coming to terms with Bryan's really specific type of writing and just frankly just learning it, because it's not. It's hyper real, right? It's not naturalistic, and I say that in the best possible way. So finding the rhythms of that, and just sitting opposite Mads, and getting into the rhythms of that writing.
Yeah, but and then there was also stuff that we were not aware of, and after the first couple of episodes, I think we had a better idea of where he was going with the visuals, which is a very big part of the show, obviously. The way it's graphic and the way it's not graphic, that fine balance was something that we had no idea where it was going to land. But we saw that after a few episodes, and I think that was really nice to lean into, because then we were also allowed to go a little further, because, as you say, it's lifted. I don't know. I mean, it's obviously based on Will Graham's development from one thing to another. and me being his teacher somehow, and you know, normally when you have a character, you want it to be very true to the character. You will often hear yourself saying, "But my character wouldn't do that," or "My character wouldn't do that." But that was not the case with Hannibal, because he could do anything. As long as it was benefiting him in the end, he could do whatever. So I rarely had those complaints. I just went like, "Okay, Bryan, a horse, a dog, I'm naked. Okay, it makes sense later." So that's basically, I was just waiting for whatever Bryan came up with, and he did surprise us once in a while.
Yeah. He told me relatively early on, I'm thinking at the end of this season, it would be really great if you vomited up an ear. Do you have any thoughts about whose ear it should be? Like, no, Bryan, no. I'll leave that with you, but being given that as a place to get to, because like Mads says, I was the opposite, going through a really extreme change. That gave, because obviously, particularly at the beginning of the show, there was the murder of the week. There's the guy with the toadstools growing out of his head, et cetera, et cetera. But underneath all of that, there was this thing between Will and Hannibal, and between. And just generally having encephalitis, which I kind of got to understand more as we went on. I do remember the first day working with Scott Thompson, and who I was familiar with, and I think Scott had this really charming quality of seeming to be bewildered that he was in the show, and I was like, oh, that's who this character is going to be. He's going to be, he's going to be Scott.
Yeah, I think it's on one of the blooper reels as well with Scott, where Well, he is one of the funny characters, obviously, for good reason. And then one of our directors just said, "Okay, let's do the straight version, the non-funny version." And Scott said, "That was the one I just did." It's like, all right. So that was he was fantastic to work with as well. Everybody was. We met so many fantastic actors throughout the show, right? That came and visited us. So it was a humbling experience. I had a scene with Lawrence. Lawrence is a foodie, and they were serving us foie gras. Can't pronounce it. Can you say it? Foie gras. It's French. Suck it up. But we just love it so much that Lawrence deliberately fucked up his lines a few times. We had to reshoot it. So the food was really as good as it looked. Yeah.
Sounds delicious. Maz, you did a lot of cooking. Do you feel like you improved as a chef?
No. I'm good at chopping things. I'm really good at chopping things and juggling stuff and catching it. But the end result is not worth mentioning. So that's why we have a real chef on the set. Am I disappointing everyone now? And I'm not a real cannibal. I'm so good. That was worse for you.
It's really hard to get that blood off. It's much harder than real blood. I'm sorry again, it wasn't real blood.
Which you would know.
Sure, yeah.
It's sticky.
There's multiple types of blood, right? There's the blood that the makeup department has, and there's the blood that the costume department has, and there's the blood that the special effects department have, and then they all argue about who has the better blood. And then, to my memory, you end up just with all of it. Because, less is not more in this case.
But they have one thing in common. It's sticky, and a lot of it has a certain amount of sugar or honey in it. So if you're one of those victims that is, in the background on a hot summer day outdoor, you will be covered by bees. So there's a little downside to that. Yeah. But it is just a super sticky thing, and for a smoker like me, it's super annoying. Try it.
We all got grossed out when we saw it in a good way, but were you ever grossed out on set? Spitting out an ear?
No. Honestly, I loved it. I was birthed from a stag. That was a good day at work,
I think there was a constant cat and mouse game between them, and we were not always sure who was the cat and who was the mouse. And so I think we just found a rhythm in that. That obviously, as you say, he is more down the department of being human than I am, and he's also going through a lot of things, which Hannibal is not. So that would obviously rub off on what he does, but he would also sometimes be smartly in control of that in order to counter what I'm doing, right? So it was back and forth.
I remember thinking at the time that one of the reasons it was so fun to work with Mads, because we both, I think, like to talk about what we're going to do to the same kind of degree, and then at the same point we wanted to not talk about it anymore and just do it, and a lot of it you're figuring out as you're doing it. Are we talking about the finale?
Mm-hmm. Finale.
End. It was great. My memory of that is, once again, being covered in blood. It's good to know we always go back to that for a solid...
Fake blood.
Fake blood?
Fake blood. Sorry.
Filming all night outside Toronto, somewhere in the countryside, that kind of fight sequence. At some point discovering a bottle of wine in the house that we were filming in and thinking that would be a good idea. And it was.
Fake wine.
Fake wine, fake news. But also behind that, like talking to Bryan, how are we going to? Look. We didn't know that was necessarily going to be a finale, but we arrived between the two of us at a place that Will and Hannibal had not been at before, right? Acceptance, I guess. And trying to figure out how to do that in a simple way and not belabor it and just, just happens.
It's a giant journey, obviously, for both of them. In reality, that is a giant journey he's gone through. But in Hannibal's world as well, even though the step is much smaller, for him, it's a gigantic leap, right?
Right, because he's
So
potentially envisioning
a future.
carrying on a few, yeah.
And he, but it's interesting because Hannibal had never ever thought about the future. He's a man who lives in the present, and for once he saw a future. Yeah. But
It's
you
a
know,
pretty horrible future.
Do you want to know what? Yeah. Do you know? You're all just taking for granted that he's part of that future. Oh yes, of course. Come on. What we know what happens, but we can't tell you because we're still crossing our fingers a couple more years, right? So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
Since we have the both of you, and since this is a reunion, what was your favorite part about working with each other?
We haven't answered yet. There wasn't one. No, it was, for me, it was those scenes, just because it's so rare. People don't write scenes that are deliberately meant to be played sat opposite each other with that kind of rich language. In any other show or movie, you think, well, I'm going to have to get up out of this chair. I've got to find a way to get out of this chair and move around because this is just going to be boring. But it wasn't that. It was this intense game of ping pong or whatever between the two of them. And I can't think that I've ever got to do that in any other job. It was rare.
I all of that, ditto. But one of the things I really enjoyed, I also think was cleverly written, was after I can't remember. Is that the end of the first season? I can't remember. Anyways, I have watched it. I have seen it. But you know that we normally were used to envision that we see Hannibal in jail with the famous mask and stuff. But I remember that scene where I walked down the alley of cells, and I come up to Will Graham, and I'm standing out there as a free man, and I say, "Hello, Will." And I think it was beautiful. And then we had like tons of scene with the bars between us. It was super tricky to shoot, but it was just so fantastic to be out there, and he was in there. Also because I knew I'm going to get him out eventually.